Good evening everyone and welcome to Clydebank Town Hall. I am Councillor Martin Rooney, leader of West Dunbartonshire Council. Can I start by saying it's a great honour for me to be here tonight. My responsibility this evening is to officially welcome you, the public, to Clydebank Town Hall. Firstly, I would like to welcome our honoured guests, the First Minister and her Cabinet, elected members representing West Dunbartonshire, many of them are out in the audience tonight, the Chief Executive of West Dunbartonshire Council, Scottish Government officials and officers of the Council. Most of all, a very heartfelt welcome to you, the public. So, welcome everyone to West Dunbartonshire and to Clydebank Town Hall. I'm a Bankie and I'm very proud of my town and its history. As part of the official welcome, I would like to give you a flavour of some of this history. Clydebank is unusual in that it started off as a shipyard in 1871 and the workers were transported in by paddle steamer. There was no town, just a shipyard. But over time, houses, a canteen, a community hall and churches were built and later railway links were established, and by the year 1880 around 2,000 men were living and working here. In 1884, Singer Manufacturing Company built a massive sewing machine factory which went on to employ 11,000 workers in Clydebank. In 1886, the local people petitioned for a police borough, which was granted, and the new town was named after the shipyard, and Clydebank was born. Our town will be 130 years old this year. The town has had its fair share of trouble, such as industrial disputes between workers and employers, and was synonymous with socialist movements, led by the shipyard workers along the Clyde, and gave rise to the title of Red Clydeside. Another example of adversity was the Clydebank Blitz, now 75 years ago. This occurred on the 13th and 14th of March in 1941, killing 528 civilians and seriously injuring 617 others. Our Provost, Douglas McAllister, will be leading the 75th anniversary commemorations on the 12th of March with wreath laying at the Blitz Memorial at Dilnotter Cemetery, a church service at Kilbilly St Andrews, and wreath laying at the Polish Memorial on Solidarity Square adjacent to the Town Hall. Clydebank shipyards built some of the world's most famous ships, such as the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth QE2 and HMS Hood, and Clydebank became a mark of quality throughout the world. The shipyards, singers and most of the old manufacturers were lost over 30 years ago, but they have left their mark on the people and on the town of Clydebank. The thing that made Clydebank great wasn't its ships or its sewing machines, it was its people, a highly skilled and highly motivated workforce. Their collective endeavours helped to create a new town, develop a new industry and establish a strong sense of community that campaigned for workers' rights and social improvements. It was all about partnership, determination and a clear vision of the future. Tonight is your public meeting where you get an opportunity to put questions to the First Minister of Scotland and her Cabinet. It's a chance for you to tell them about the challenges you face, to talk about your opportunities and your future. I am really looking forward to hearing the discussions, and I'm sure there will be some very interesting questions. On that note, I will now hand over to your MC for tonight, the Minister for Business, Joe Fitzpatrick, MSP. And finally, thank you and welcome to Clydebank.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rooney, for that warm welcome and brief history lesson. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Cabinet is delighted to be here in Clydebank for what is the first Cabinet meeting outside of Edinburgh in 2016. It's fantastic to see so many of you here tonight in such a magnificent hall. When the First Minister came to office in 2014, she pledged that this would be the most open and accessible Scottish Government ever. Since then, the Cabinet has met all across Scotland. This is your opportunity to ask questions about local and national issues and about the work of the Scottish Government. In a moment, you'll hear from the First Minister. We'll then open the floor to take your questions for about an hour. Following that, we hope you'll join us for refreshments and opportunity to continue the discussions with individual Cabinet Ministers. So without any further ado, would you please welcome the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for your introduction, and thank you, Councillor Rooney, for your introduction. And can I begin by thanking you and your colleagues in the Council for making us so welcome here in Clydebank today. It's absolutely great to be here with you this evening, to be here in Clydebank, a town that, as we've just heard from Councillor Rooney, is steeped in history, particularly in the industrial history of our country. And I want to begin by thanking all of you for coming here tonight. It's absolutely fantastic to look out and see what's probably in the region of 200 people here on a rather chilly Monday night to talk about politics and local and national issues and the things that are important to you, to your families, to your communities and to our country. And as Joe was just telling you, this practice of getting out and about around the country is one of the ways in which we are trying to meet the pledge that I made when I first became First Minister. And that pledge was that I would do everything I can to lead the most open and accessible Scottish Government that we've ever had. And so it follows that the main purpose of tonight's discussion isn't really for you to listen to us, it's for us to listen to you. And that's why the vast bulk of the time tonight is set aside for your questions. And I want to stress at this stage that you can ask us absolutely anything you want to tonight. Sometimes when people come to these meetings, they kind of assume that we vet the questions in advance and you're only allowed to ask us the questions that we want you to ask us. That's not true. There's no vetting of questions, there's no screening of questions. You can ask about any subject you want, and we will do our very best to answer the questions that you ask as fully and as openly as we possibly can. If for some reason we can't provide an immediate answer for you tonight, it might be a particularly detailed or specific question that you want to ask, we will get back to you. And if you have a question that you'd rather not ask in open public session, it may be that you've got a personal matter that you would like to raise with us, then you can talk to us after the discussion, or you can submit a question in one of the forms that I think have been left on your seats. But the point I'm stressing tonight is this is your opportunity. You can raise whatever issues are important to you and ask whatever questions you want to tonight. So I hope you'll take the opportunity and I hope above all else that you enjoy the experience. I've no doubt, based on previous meetings like this, that will cover a very wide range of topics tonight, and I'm not going to try to cover every possible topic that we might talk about later on in advance. But I want to take the opportunity, just reasonably briefly, to say a few words to set out the general approach that we as your Scottish Government are taking. Back in September last year, we did what the Government does every year. We published our programme for government, and that sets out the plans of the Scottish Government for the months ahead, but also sets out our vision for the country for the next 5 to 10 years. And it sets out to describe the ways in which we are trying to create a country that is wealthier, that is fairer, and also more democratically engaged. So I just want to illustrate these 3 themes for you tonight: prosperity, fairness and engagement, by talking about some of the things that I and my colleagues here have been doing during the course of the day. Because when we go out and about with the Cabinet on tour, as we've taken to calling it, we don't just hold a Cabinet meeting and a public discussion. We take the opportunity to meet local individuals, local organisations and local businesses. And that's one of the big benefits to us of coming to different parts of the country, because we get to hear the things that are important in different areas of the country. So between all of us here today, we've undertaken round about 15 different visits and meetings. Richard Lockhead visited Lomond Brewery, Fiona Hislop went to the Dunbartonshire Arts Hub, Alec Neil met Clydebank Housing Association, Angela Constance visited Linvale Primary School, Rosanna Cunningham met and spoke with managers and staff at Polaroid in Dumbarton. And her visit, of course, was part of an ongoing dialogue between the Scottish Government and Polaroid. We know that, given Polaroid's announcement last week, that this is a really worrying time for staff who work at the plant. And I want to give an assurance to you tonight that the Government will be exploring every possible option to keep that plant open. And we're going to do everything we can to help any workers at the plant who might be facing redundancy. One of the visits I made this afternoon, along with John Swinney, was to Glenhead Engineers, just a kilometre or so away from here. Glenhead, as some of you will probably know, makes precision tools and special purpose machines for a wide range of different sectors, defence, aviation and energy, to name just a few. It's a local employer, and based on what I saw today, a very successful local employer that is succeeding in markets not just across the UK, but in many different parts of the world. And Glenhead, in many ways, is a perfect example of the kind of successful, innovative company that we want to see more of in Scotland. We want Scotland to be, quite simply, the best place anywhere in the UK for companies to do business. One of the first steps we actually took when we were first elected to government in 2007 was to try to create the most competitive business rate system anywhere in the UK. Here in Dunbartonshire, for example, more than 1,300 businesses benefit from our small business bonus. That's the scheme whereby small businesses pay either no business rates at all or reduced business rates, because we understand that small businesses are very often the engine of our economy. And across Dunbartonshire as a whole, Business Gateway helps more than 300 new businesses. Scottish Enterprise provided last year advice and support to 29 local companies, including Glenhead. And beyond that, direct support for businesses, because these are the businesses that are creating jobs and opportunities for people across Dunbartonshire and further afield. But beyond that direct support, we're trying to pursue an economic strategy that is based on innovation, exports, skills and infrastructure. As an example of the infrastructure that our businesses need to be successful, we're working right now to ensure that at least 95% of all premises all over Scotland have access to superfast broadband by the end of next year. Because in this day and age, with modern technologies, businesses need access to fast internet in order to be successful. In Dunbartonshire, that figure by the end of next year will actually be more than 98% of all premises will have access to superfast broadband. In fact, several neighbourhoods in Clydebank got access last October, and this is of course part of a nationwide investment that will enhance people's quality of life but also boost our economic competitiveness. So that's an example, alongside transport and employment and skills provision, of the infrastructure that we need to support a strong economy. But the reason John and I visited Glenhead today was because we were announcing some additional support to promote our manufacturing industry. And as we heard earlier on, manufacturing is in the very lifeblood of Clydebank. So yesterday we announced the allocation of £70 million of new funding to support what's called the circular economy, where products are designed in a way that enables them to be reused at the end of their lives. It's good for the environment, it's good for the need we have now to be efficient in how we use materials, but it also presents massive opportunities to companies in the manufacturing sector. And that announcement yesterday was part of the new strategy for manufacturing that John and I were launching today, which sets out a whole range of measures for supporting manufacturing and encouraging more companies to be successful, just like Glenhead already is. And at the heart of that strategy is our plan to establish a new centre for manufacturing excellence and a new skills academy. That centre will deliver training programmes for employees and managers and provide practical help to companies in the manufacturing sector. Now, why is that important? Because manufacturing is a big part of our economy. It makes up more than half of the goods that we export abroad. It accounts for more than half of all of the investment that we make as a country in research and development. People who work in manufacturing tend to earn more than the average wages in our country. So we want to support that sector so that it becomes an ever more important part of our economy, and it's vital to support it because at the time we want it to succeed even more, we recognise the global environment is ever more competitive. And the importance of manufacturing, again, as we heard, for a town like Clydebank is so very important. You know, manufacturing and the benefits of manufacturing are evident everywhere you look in Clydebank, in everything from the Titan crane to the Singer stop on the railway, the shipbuilding history of this part of the country. But manufacturing, although it's a proud part of our heritage, we believe should also be a really significant part of our future because it is vital to creating the kind of productive and wealthier country that we want to see. So that's why we've put such an emphasis on it during our visit to the heart of Scotland's industrial and manufacturing tradition here in Clydebank. But we know that as we work to become a more prosperous country, it's also really important that we take action to become a fairer and more equal country as well. There's a wealth of evidence now from right around the world that if you're unequal as a country, you don't just create inequality that harms individuals, we actually hold back our economy. The OECD, which is a group of 34 developed nations, did a big study on this, and it estimated that if you look between the years 1990 and 2010 in the UK, the levels of inequality that exist in the UK reduced our economic growth by as much as £1,600 for every person in the country. And I think that demonstrates something that we all know instinctively. We're all better off when everybody in our society has a chance to contribute their talent, their skills and their energies to society. So our economic strategy prioritises fairness and competitiveness together. We don't see these as competing objectives, we see them very much as two sides of the same coin. That's why, for example, right now we're investing more than £100 million every year to mitigate the impact of the welfare cuts we're seeing coming from the UK government. As part of that, we're ensuring that nobody in Scotland has to pay the bedroom tax, and as we hopefully over the next few years get more powers over welfare and employability, we'll be able to make sure that they are founded on what I think are fundamental basic principles of fairness and human dignity. And of course, world-class public services like health and education are also the bedrock of a fairer society. They're essential to ensure that everybody's got that fair opportunity to fulfil their potential. Take education, for example. Keith Brown visited St Ronan's Primary earlier on today. And that's one of a number of local schools that has been upgraded in recent years. In fact, since 2007, more than a quarter of all school buildings across Scotland have been rebuilt or refurbished because we know we need to make sure young people have the best physical environment to learn in. We're also making it a priority to close the attainment gap in our schools between children in the most affluent parts of our country and those in the most deprived areas. So here in West Dunbartonshire, all 33 primary schools are receiving targeted funding under our attainment challenge, and Linvale, that was visited by Angela Constance earlier today, is one of those schools. And then if you look at the health service, one of the other visits I did today, along with Shona Robison, was to the Golden Jubilee Hospital. That hospital, which I visited many, many times when I was Health Secretary, has been an absolutely stunning success since it was brought into the NHS back in 2002 under a previous administration. When I was there today, I met the 500,000th patient to be treated there. So they've treated now 500,000 patients at the Golden Jubilee. Robert Gibson was the man I met. He had a triple heart bypass and he now looks fitter than any of us on this platform, I can tell you. But of course, in addition to heart operations, the Golden Jubilee does thousands of operations every year, replacing hips and knees and doing cataract operations. And these are the kind of hospital procedures that make a huge difference to people's quality of life. And the Golden Jubilee provides specialist facilities for them. And that means people get expert care, but it also means that when they're going in for a hip or a knee operation, they're not subject to delays because an emergency operation might be urgently needed. As a result of that, the Golden Jubilee here in Clydebank has contributed directly to a situation we see now in Scotland, where for almost all types of what's called elective treatment, so non-emergency treatment in our hospitals, like hip and knee replacements, waiting times in Scotland are shorter than they are anywhere else in the UK. But as the population ages, as more of us live longer, the demand for these kind of procedures is going to grow and grow and grow. We're going into an era now where people will live long enough not just to have one hip replacement, but they'll need perhaps multiple hip replacements during their lifetime. So what we intend to do over the next few years is create a number of specialist centres like the Golden Jubilee. We're going to invest £200 million in the next 5 years to create diagnostic and treatment centres in different parts of the country, trying to replicate the success of the Golden Jubilee in different areas of Scotland. But you know, although it's beneficial for people often to have surgery in special centres like the Golden Jubilee, usually they don't need their follow-up care there because the majority of support they need can and should be delivered more locally. That's why local hospitals like the Vale of Leven are so important. It's also why local services like integrated health and care services and improved primary care are at the heart of how we see the health service develop in the years to come. John Swinney was at Queen's Quay today to see the regeneration plans there, and as some of you will know, alongside the business units and the housing which is planned for there, there's also going to be a new Clydebank Health Centre, and that will replace the current centre, which I understand is 40 years old, and replace it with modern facilities. And that, I hope, is further evidence of our commitment to transform GP and primary care services as part of our commitment to a world-class health service, because more people need to be treated as close to home as possible. I mentioned the Vale of Leven a second ago, and I just want to say a word more about the Vale of Leven, because I know that for many of you in this audience, that hospital is a critical part of the health service that you value so highly. When I was Health Secretary, I again visited that hospital regularly, and Shona Robison visited the Vale of Leven just this afternoon and was able to give the staff she met there the same assurances that I'm going to give you now. Back in 2009, you'll remember, I was Health Secretary at this time, we approved the Vale of Leven vision statement, and that was designed then to give certainty about the future of the Vale of Leven, because for a long time the future of that hospital had been very uncertain. And I want to confirm to you today that the Scottish Government, and I'm personally committed to this and Shona's committed to it, we remain as committed to the vision for the Vale today as we were back when it was published. The Vale is a vital part. The Vale, and I learned this very well when I was Health Secretary, the Vale is a vital part of your local health service, and we're going to make sure that it continues to be for many, many, many years to come, and that includes making sure that emergency services are retained at the Vale of Leven. So that's our commitment to your local health service, which is part of our commitment to your national health service. We've invested an additional £3 billion in the health service since we took office, and that's one of the reasons why we can secure a future for the Vale. It's also why we've got 10,000 more staff working not just in the Vale of Leven but in the health service across the country now than was the case a few years ago. The health service matters so much to all of us, and it's one of the most important duties of any government to make sure we safeguard it for the future. So I've talked a wee bit about what we want to do, some of the steps we're taking to boost the economy, improve our public services and make Scotland a fairer and more prosperous country. I want to just end now by saying a little bit about how we want to do that. And this evening's public meeting is very relevant to this. One of the wonderful things about the independence referendum campaign back in 2014 was the sense of engagement and participation that it inspired on both sides of the debate. You know, people discussed the future of the country, what kind of country we wanted Scotland to be and how we thought we could achieve that in a way that probably has never happened before, certainly not in my lifetime. And for a period during 2014, it didn't matter where you went, you know, everywhere, from the pubs to the hairdressers, to the cafes, to the street corners, people were talking about the future of our country. And one of the things I would like to achieve as First Minister is to harness that energy, that sense of engagement, and for us to use it to tackle the day-to-day issues that we face as a country. And we are determined to do that. We don't have all the answers. You elect us to run the country, and that's a responsibility we take seriously. But your expertise, your views, and what you think matters helps us in doing that job. So that's partly what tonight is about. It's to give you the opportunity to tell us what you think matters so that we can take that away and make sure we feed that into the decisions that we take, decisions that affect your community, your family and your country. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. As I promised, for the rest of the evening, it's over to you. And I'll end by telling you one of the great advantages of being First Minister. Perhaps the biggest advantage of being First Minister rather than just a minister here. It means that as First Minister, I get to decide who answers your questions this evening. So they better be on their toes. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, First Minister. So we're now going to move into the formal question and answer session. So I'm going to take questions in batches of 3 and then invite the First Minister to decide who's going to respond. I've also received some questions through social media, which I'll try and slip in as the night goes on. Now, we normally have more questions than time available, so if we don't get a chance to come back to you, as the First Minister said, there's forms on your chair, so if you fill those in, and every question will receive a written answer. So let's make a start. Can I ask folk to raise their hands if you have a question and wait for the microphone to reach you? If you could please give your name before asking your question, and big important thing, if you could try and keep your question as concise as possible, and Cabinet Ministers will do likewise, and then we'll get through as many of your questions as possible. So let's make a start. If you put your hands up if you have a question. So just right here.
Hi, I'm Hayley Fallon and I'm an MSYP for Clydebank. I would just like to ask a transport question. If the SNP had an overall majority, would it be considered that the public transport would be available for young people, subside for young people? For example, as soon as a young person turns 16, they have to pay an adult fare to get to education each day. This applies for university and college too, who may have to travel from rural areas into cities.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and lady there, second row.
This is a question about the EU. I'm for staying like the government is, but lots of people have expressed anxieties about TTIP. and saying that being in the EU might make it more difficult to resist. Just an answer from you on that.
Okay, and one more. And lady just in the middle there. Yeah.
Hi, Sharon. My question's about housing, in particular the benefit cap that's coming in April. Is there a plan for the Scottish Government to add more funding to DHP to help mitigate that really horrific benefit cap that's going to affect so many thousands of people?
Okay.
Three excellent questions to kick off with. Hayley, I'm delighted you managed to get your question in first. We were talking just beforehand. I'm going to ask Keith to answer your question about transport. And then, sorry, I didn't catch... Rosalind. I'll ask Fiona, who's here, sorry, I have to work out where they all are, to answer your question about the EU and TTIP, which we have concerns about as well. And then Sharon Alec-Neil will answer your question about the benefit cap and particularly DHP's discretionary housing payments. So, Keith, do you want to kick off with Hayley's question?
Thanks for the question, Hayley. I think what we do try and do is try and give as much support as we can, say, for example, to young people travelling by train. There are special initiatives we managed to bring in around, for example, job seekers now have a reduced fare that they pay on the train, which is quite substantial because train travel is very costly. It surprises people to find out that for every £1 you pay for a train ticket, the government puts in £3. It's a very expensive form of travel, very important. On bus, I think it's fair to say that what we've done is try to protect older people from the cost of that, and it's partly to do with the fact, of course, having contributed right throughout their working lives to that, we think it's very important. It's good for social reasons as well, because they can move around the country. Your point about possibly, I think, about discounting services, bus services for young people is an important point. What I could say is we are about to come to our manifesto, as all the parties are, and that's something we should certainly look at. But we have concentrated so far on trying to reduce the cost across the board. So we provide something called the Bus Services Operators Grant, which helps to reduce the price for all buses. And of course, I've mentioned already, as well as one or two other particular categories, we tend to provide concessionary travel for older people. It's an important point, and I suppose it's whether we can extend that. We do some discounts on ferries for young people as well, to see if we can extend that to buses. So happy to look at that. Thanks.
It's an important point, Hayley. I was talking to some young people last week who were making the point that young people, not through any decisions we take, I hasten to add, they get paid a lower level of the minimum wage, and yet you have to pay the same costs for many of the things that you rely on to get to work if you've got a job. So there is a bit of discrimination there in how we treat young people. So as Keith said, we can't promise things that we can't afford, but fairness is something that is very important to us. So we'll take your point as we consider our manifesto. Fiona, do you want to take TTIP?
Very important point, particularly two issues to this. One is what would happen if the UK wasn't part of the EU in relation to trade agreements like TTIP, and what would happen then, but also in relation to what's happening in the here and now. In relation to TTIP, there's a real strong concern, not just in Scotland but across Europe, about the issue about public services in particular. We don't want multinationals to be able to privatise or challenge some of the issues that are so important to us. And our First Minister has made it absolutely clear to David Cameron, particularly around our national health services, but there are other areas. But it's not just this country that's got concerns about it. If you look at what happened in Berlin just a few weeks ago, hundreds of thousands of people expressing their concerns about it. Now, trade agreements are important to all countries. We have them already, and will continue to have them. But your question about what would happen whether Scotland or the UK was part of the EU or not, if we weren't part of the EU, you'd be left to a Conservative government brokering all the trade agreements, and I don't think they would necessarily be as strong in protecting public services if their past record is anything to go by than currently. So I think it's a complex issue, a lot of areas of concern, not just in Scotland and shared by others. You're absolutely right to look at that, but I don't think we'd be in a far better position if we were out of the EU. I think we'd be in a very vulnerable position, because each and every one of those trade agreements would be led by a Tory government that this country hasn't voted for.
Alec, can you deal with Sharon's question?
Yeah. Sharon, the first thing to say is that this new benefit cap is again an ill-thought-out reform, so-called reform. There's really another form of cut for some of the most vulnerable people in our community, and it will particularly affect certain groups of women very adversely, particularly women, for example, living in a women's refuge is one example. So we've already written to the UK government to ask them to think again, because they have not thought out the full consequences of this benefit cap. And therefore, the first line of attack is to try to get them to change their mind. If they don't change their mind, then we will look at those hardship cases to see if there's anything we can do. We don't have the money to simply replace everything that's going to be cut, because our own budget has been absolutely hammered. Our revenue budget's been cut by 12% a year. But we will look at those areas, if they still persist with this nonsense, where women are forced into hardship as a result of it, or anyone for that matter, forced into hardship, we'll look to see if there's anything we can do to help.
There is a really important point, a principle here. You know, we mitigate where we can the decisions that the Tories are taking about welfare. So, as you probably know, we are putting millions of pounds into discretionary housing payments every year just now, so that nobody has to pay the bedroom tax. If you're liable for the bedroom tax, you can apply for one of these payments, which we fund, and so you don't have to worry about the bedroom tax. And as Alex said, we'll look for options to do that wherever we can. But I get very frustrated sometimes at having to find money in the Scottish Government's budget to mitigate the policies from the Tories that we disagree with over welfare. Wouldn't it be better to cut out the middleman and just take these decisions ourselves here in Scotland in the first place?
Okay, let's see hands again. Right at the very back there. Lady right at the back.
And I'd like to ask what the Scottish Government position is in retaining school librarians in your plans for raising attainment.
Okay, somebody. And right at the front here, Barbara.
Hi, my name's Rachel and I'm a secondary school teacher. And another education-based question for you. I would like to ask the Government how they expect schools to actually raise the attainment of every single pupil, given the shocking overworking of teachers through assessment in the CFE structure, and also the increasing lack of stability in teacher numbers which the Government has vowed to maintain.
Okay, is there somebody at the back over here? Yeah. Lady there, yeah. Perfect.
Hi, Katie. I've just gone with the education theme here. I'm a primary school teacher, and you're talking about attainment as well. I am all for raising attainment, but the big issue we have is presumption to mainstream. And most of the money, the raising attainment money, is going towards dealing with the 10% of children whose needs aren't being met in mainstream. They really should be with specialist provision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, all three of these are for you, Angela. All really important questions. Sorry, I didn't, your microphone was it Catherine? Yeah, so Catherine on school libraries, obviously very relevant to our focus on literacy. Rachel on the assessment burden on teachers, and obviously the working group we recently set up is relevant there. And then Katie's question about what is, you know, I recognise a very difficult and often quite sensitive balance between mainstreaming and specialist provision. So over to you, Angela.
Okay, thank you very much, First Minister. And it's great to have three education questions, one after the other. I think this must be a first that's happened. Can I say, I mean, school librarians are hugely important. It is important as part of our journey to improve literacy throughout our education system, that schools have the right resources. And I'll go on to talking about teacher numbers later, but there is a wider education team that is crucial to supporting the education and the teaching and learning that our children receive. In terms of employing school librarians, it is local government that is the employer in that regard, and I don't directly employ any teachers or indeed school librarians. As a government, we are very supportive towards libraries as a whole, and I know Fiona Hislop, in her role as the Culture Secretary, certainly spends resource from her budget into the Scottish Centre for Information on Libraries. So libraries are hugely important. They're also a service for the community, and a lot of the work that we're doing as a government in terms of early literacy through the book bug initiatives, the Play, Talk, Read campaign, the Read, Write, Count campaign, they have a huge emphasis on trying to provide more services to people that are available in their local library. And it is interesting that some councils are working very hard to retain libraries, to develop their services, and also some councils are working very hard to retain school librarians because they're part of that wider teaching team. In terms of protecting teacher numbers, as a government we have indeed taken very firm action to protect teacher numbers, and I know that in terms of Dunbartonshire Council, they entered into an agreement with the Scottish Government at this time last year, and they came good on that agreement. As a government, we invest £52 million extra to help maintain teacher numbers, and Dunbartonshire actually went up by the equivalent of 10 full-time teachers last year and maintained their pupil-teacher ratio. And there is no evidence anywhere that suggests that to reduce teacher numbers that would actually improve education or help us to close the attainment gap. So teacher numbers are indeed important. And I am very aware, particularly with the introduction of the new exams, that there are concerns about teacher workload. I share that concern. I don't want our children to be burdened or over-assessed more than they need to be assessed, and I don't want teachers tied down with bureaucracy either. And I've established a ministerial working group. It's chaired by one of my junior ministers, Dr. Allen. It reports directly to me, and it is looking at this very issue about how can we get the right balance of assessment, and how can we do more to strip out some of the bureaucracy that is not in the interests of our teachers. We want teachers to be freed up to teach, but importantly, more importantly, it's not in the interests of our children to be over-assessed either. In terms of the assumption for mainstreaming, it is true that Scotland has one of the most inclusive education systems anywhere in Europe, and there are many people across Europe that look to our education system in terms of how we support young people and children with additional support needs. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't also have our ongoing challenges. But the really important thing to remember that through the additional support for needs legislation, that it is at the end of the day about the needs of the individual child. And where local authorities are making decisions that perhaps parents or carers don't agree with, they do indeed have the right to be challenging that, and there is a mechanism to do that as well. But I'm happy to pick up on any of these points further when we have a cup of tea later.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Man right at the front here.
Just to first of all welcome the First Minister and the Cabinet to Clydebank, the guest town. My question is about the Community Empowerment Act coming into place this year. Just to understand what sort of funding mechanisms are available to community groups to take that forward to make it the success that it should be.
Just give us your name.
Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, and then right at the end at the front as well.
Hello, my name's Elspeth, and I would like to ask a question about historical tourism in this area, please. Many people in Clydebank, Dunbarton and the Vale feel that this is untapped potential, that historical tourism is underexploited, both industrial tourism in all three towns and in particular Dunbarton Castle. The latest figures we have show that of the three so-called royal castles in the Central Belt, Edinburgh gets more than 1.5 million visitors a year, Stirling gets over 400,000, and Dunbarton only gets 16,000 last year, so we feel at the poor relations. I would like to ask you what you could do to help us.
Great question.
Okay, and then the gentleman, very back.
My name is Mark Nam. My question was about fracking for Fergus Ewing. Is Fergus here?
Fergus is not here, but we'll answer your question.
I'll just go back to education then.
You can ask a question about fracking if you want. John will answer it if you want.
Well, that's me get 3 questions now, John.
Oh yeah,
you've got a question on.
I know your game.
You also got a question on your promise in Caledonian University. I think it was 2010, 2011, not to privatise any part of the water industry, and that's happening, which gives me great concern.
Okay, we'll take that.
If I follow on to that to Angela, and Angela, you had a discussion there with individuals fully support 100% good teachers, but they says to you that there's people that need the support that aren't getting it, and that's about their approximate 10%. Currently we're spending more money on Gaelic than you are in things like dyslexia, for example. And you say there's a mechanism for supporting individuals to complain or go through a complaints procedure, but that might take one child a year of their educational life, so it's not really a sensible approach. And if you ever try to use a complaints procedure, even in West Dunbartonshire where you're sitting just now, the barriers to actually getting a complaint is going through different sections of different levels of different people to different departments to different areas. So what is a complaints procedure? And you may remember discussing that with me earlier at an education meeting up at Strathclyde.
Do you want to very quickly give us what your fracking question was? Dead quickly.
I think I've got the gist of it.
The gist is integrity of systems you operate and honesty.
Okay.
Well done. That was 3 questions for the price of 1. Craig, I'm going to ask Alec Neil to answer your question about community empowerment. Elspeth, that's a cracking question, by the way, and a really important one. Fiona is going to take that. And then Martin will do all 3 of your questions. John, if you can briefly deal with fracking. I'm not sure what the specific question was, but we'll deal with their position overall in fracking. Keith, do you want to take on the point about water? Because Scottish Water, of course, remains firmly in public hands, and it will continue to under this government. And then Angela, can I answer about the complaints process of West Dunbartonshire Council, because we're not responsible for the complaints process, but maybe just a word about the point about Gaelic and dyslexia, because, you know, the amount of money that's spent on Gaelic in this country is tiny compared to other things. But you can maybe just briefly take on the thrust of Martin's question there. So let's kick off, Alec, on community empowerment.
Well, the Community Empowerment Act is designed to put power into your hands, but not just power, but resources to do something with the power. So, for example, one of the things you can do if the council declares a building surplus to requirements, you have the right to acquire that building for your own purposes, for community purposes and all the rest of it. Just one example of the many, many things you'll be now empowered to do under the Community Empowerment Act. But your question was very relevant about the funding. Now, there are various funding sources available that you can apply for, but the main one we have as a government is called the Empowering Communities Fund. And in all its different guises, there's about £19.5 million in that fund each year. So if you've got a good proposal that might be about helping local people in the community, for example, to be able to do things for themselves, if you've got a project that would be beneficial to the community, you can apply to the Empowering Communities Fund to try to get funding from that. But that's only one source. For example, we have an agreement with the Big Lottery Fund that they align their investment along with what we're trying to do, and one of the things the Big Lottery Fund is keen to do is to invest in various forms of community empowerment. So if it's a project that meets their criteria, they would probably back it as well. And of course, you've also then got a plethora of individual funds like the Robertson Fund, which spends £18 million a year in Scotland, and some of that is on community empowerment type projects. So if we could get your details after the meeting, we'll send you a full list of all the different sources of funding you can get, but the bottom line is there is funding available so that the community can empower itself and do sometimes what the politicians don't want you to do.
Okay, and Fiona, on historical tourism.
And that leads on very well, because the people who know this place and the history in terms of how you can tell the history of a place will very much come from the community here, and that's why part of the activity that's already taken place with the charrette round Dunbarton Castle and everything is actually about working with the Historical Society in Dunbarton and others about how you can best tell that history. And when I visited the castle in particular, I'm very keen to see how you can connect, and the work about connecting the castle in Dunbarton with the rest of the community there. But it's also how we tell our industrial heritage. One of the things I did as a minister was have direct relationship with the industrial heritage museums that we have in Scotland. And we're maybe, we've got a mining museum, Fisher's Museum, but we're maybe not as good as we should be about telling our industrial heritage. John Swinney was telling me about visiting the Titan crane today. There are only two cantilever cranes in the whole of the world. One's obviously here. The other one's in Nagasaki, and I visited there in the summer. And it's part of their heritage story. And so one of Scotland's done is we've carried out a 3D scanning using laser technology of here, the Titan crane here, and also the one in Nagasaki. So we can use digital means of telling the story. I was at the Fresh Creations today, and there were young people who've made a film telling a bit of the history of the Titan crane, Ghostbusters, if anybody hasn't seen it. And there's something about how we can try and link that together, but the idea that this ancient part of Scotland should not be using its heritage as a tourism is beyond me, and I think it's something that actually its time most definitely has come. And I've visited, if you haven't seen the exhibition next door, Invasion, looking at the Roman coin that was found obviously just last year, part of the treasure trove, that Antonine story as well. So you've got plenty stories to tell, but the real trick on historical heritage tourism is how do you get the economic benefit in your towns? So it's great having museums, and it's great to have the places to visit or even the stories to tell, but it's important that your pubs, your cafes, everything in the area gets the benefits so you can get the jobs from that. So I think the work that's ongoing, I've asked Historic Scotland to keep close, particularly on the Dumbarton side of things, but even with St Peter's Seminary, it's now going to be on the map as part of the Year of Innovation, Architecture and Design. And if you think about the engineering that has taken place in this place, to tell that story as part of Scotland's story. So the potential is there, but it's not necessarily folk from Edinburgh or elsewhere coming here telling you how to do it. I think the leadership should come from here, and I think that's a great connection of what can happen within community empowerment as to where you tell those stories and how you tell them. But I'm a big supporter. You've got a great story here to tell. It needs to be told.
Good stuff. Right. I'm going to ask the next three to be brief, given that it is three questions in one. So, John, if you can cover a position of fracking, first of all.
Just on fracking, First Minister, the Government's taken a view that our policy decisions on all these questions should be based on the best available evidence. So we've commissioned work to assess all of the implications of fracking, so that we can properly understand all of those implications before we take any decisions. Now, to enable us to make sure that we can do that properly and fully, there is a moratorium in place on the consideration of any applications whatsoever. So there is a guarantee that no decisions will be taken on giving the go-ahead for any fracking developments in Scotland until such time as we have undertaken all of the research that is required to be undertaken in this respect, published that, and considered all of the issues that arise out of that. So there are no decisions going to be taken by the Scottish Government that would enable fracking to be taken forward. We have an evidence-led process that's in place to undertake all of that analysis, and no decisions will be taken whilst that process is underway.
Okay, and Keith, briefly on the Scottish Water, and I think probably it was more about the business stream issue, but in that context.
Just very quickly, in 1998, the government in Westminster passed an act, the Competition Act, which then meant that the Scottish Parliament had to look at the implications of that to protect the public ownership of Scottish Water. The way they did that in 2005 was to make sure that business stream was separated, so dealing with the businesses, and that would be subject to, in future, to competitive tender, but that would have the effect of making sure that Scottish Water, the supply, the billing, the charge setting of Scottish Water would be left in public hands. A recent result of that was that tender for the business side of it, which involves billing for the private sector and involves things like energy efficiency measures for the private sector, was won by a different company. The important point is that was done, and I'm not going to criticise, it was a previous administration, I think they did the right thing. The important point to remember is this government is committed to the public ownership of Scottish Water. It stays in public hands. Not a single person in Scotland will have their water supplied by a private company. It will stay in public hands. And this was done in order to make sure that was the case. It was also a consortium involving all sorts of public bodies and local authorities. So I think it was the right decision to do, and it's protected the public ownership of water in Scotland.
It's basically the... Basically the billing and the metering for business customers, but as Keith said, Scottish Water's in public hands, and as long as we've got anything to do with it, it will stay in public hands, and the supply of water is entirely public. Now, I'm going to hand over to Angela briefly on this Gaelic point, but I think you had a point about complaints processes. As I say, we can't answer questions about West Dunbartonshire or any council's complaints process, but generally, of course, if anybody makes a complaint to a public authority and are not satisfied, there is the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman as well, who will consider complaints that people haven't had a satisfactory answer to. But Angela, briefly, do you want to take on the point about Gaelic?
Well, I'd actually missed the question about Gaelic, and I will pick up on Martin on that later. But can I say, in terms of additional support needs, more than 20% of children in Scottish schools have an additional support need or an additional learning need of some description. And while it is, imperative and appropriate and right that some of those children will have to be educated in specialist provision, our education system has to adapt and accept that most children with additional support needs can and should be educated within mainstream schools. And the point I was trying to make, not so much one about a complaints process, but children with additional support needs have the right to a coordinated support plan, and their parents and carers can challenge that if the needs are not being met locally through the Additional Support for Needs Tribunal. And I did promise the First Minister I'll be brief, so I will just end on this point. One thing, there are many things about education in Scotland I would want to change, and here's one of them. Parents of children with additional support needs or parents with children who have disabilities always have to fight for absolutely everything. And one thing I would like to change is that the people just start getting things because they have the right to it and they don't have to fight for it in the first place. So that means at Scottish Government and at local government level, we all have to work harder to ensure that that happens.
Okay, thank you. Next round now, please, just one question, because otherwise there's a lot of folk now wanting to get in, so just one question at a time, and hopefully we'll get as many people in as possible. Lady right at the end there, has been waiting for a while. Yeah.
Hi, this is about trying to get our waters utilised better. Sorry, my name's Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
I feel that there's an awful lot of traffic. I come from Argyll in Butte, I live in Arica, and the A82, as everybody will know, is an absolute murderous road between heavy loaders, lorry loads and different things. I feel it would be nice if we could maybe utilise Ferguson's and try and get some of the kids onto a new programme of building a different type of boat in the Clyde, and maybe getting these loggers and lorries off the roads and get them back onto the waters. The whole of this country is surrounded by water, and we must have ports that we can take the different produces or whatever in and out of these ports instead of using the way, I mean, our roads are just gridlocked. You can't travel at all, especially in peak times.
Okay.
Thank
Francis,
you.
Yeah. Just keep in front of gentlemen. No, let's go. Yeah.
Hello, my name's Charlie. It was mentioned earlier on about Europe and TTIP, but my point has been, in the doomsday scenario, as I see it, if England, the majority of people in England is large enough to take Scotland, who votes against leaving Europe, what can the Scottish Government do about this? Because my greatest fear is that it will open us up to the worst excesses of the Tory government pertaining to human rights, etc. You know, where Europe's not perfect by any means, but by God, it's a whole lot better than what the Tories could throw at us, you know. So.
Okay, second back row there, yeah.
Hello, my name's Lynn. I work in the voluntary sector in criminal justice, and I'd like to ask if you could flesh out a bit more details around alternatives to custody for women offenders following the very sensible decision to close Court and Vale.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, Linda, I think I'll ask Keith to have a go at your question. Sounds a very sensible question about utilising our waterways, particularly maybe make mention of Ferguson's, which is a huge success story now after it came so close to being closed. Charlie, I'll maybe take your question on the EU and what happens if we end up getting taken out of the EU. And Lynn, your question will be answered by Michael Matheson. So do you want to kick off, Keith?
I think, first of all, on Ferguson's, it's worth pointing out just the amount of work that went into making sure that the contracts which were so essential to Ferguson staying in business, both the current First Minister, Deputy First Minister and the former First Minister did a huge amount of work, and it's hugely successful because it was so iconic. I think in relation to waterborne freight, I think was mainly the object of your question. We do have specific grants which we can give for waterborne freight, and we do that. Perhaps the most obvious service is the one, the DFDS service that goes from Rosyth to Europe. However, it has been difficult to actually award those grants, partly because of European restrictions on it, and also because the private operators who have to apply for these grants have to put the case together, and sometimes business circumstances change. So I think there is more for us to do to make sure we can make it as attractive and easy as possible. For example, the waterborne freight grant was abolished down south in 2005. We've kept it going, but sometimes it's not been taken up. So I think there's more for us to do there. And secondly, the other point is to say in relation to taking some of the lorries off the road, or at least the freight, we've tried to innovate there as well. So in Richard Lockhead's area, we had an innovation whereby the whisky train, we put as much whisky produce from Murrayshire in the northeast of the country onto trains to try and get some of those lorries off the road. Now, it's an ongoing project, and you're right to say it can be exasperating if the roads are full of lorries. We are trying to see what we can do about that. One thing we've done, for example, on the A9, it was to increase the speed at which lorries were able to travel to make it more easy for other traffic, at the same time as helping safety with average speed cameras. So it's a complex problem, and we would like to develop more routes both to Europe and elsewhere so we could put freight onto ships. Unfortunately, what a lot of the hauliers do just now, and you saw this when you had the problems down at the Channel Tunnel, they have a business model which means they want to take their produce, especially shellfish and so on, right the way down to the Channel Tunnel and take it across that way. What we've got to do is try and get underneath that business model, make it as easy as possible for them to move either to the canal network that we have or to other waterborne freight options as well, and at the same time to do more, and we have done quite a bit in terms of freight facilities, grant and so on, to get people off the roads with produce onto the railways. It's an ongoing problem, and I understand your frustration, and we'll keep trying to do more.
Okay, Charlie, you're right, the European Union is far from perfect. There's lots and lots wrong with the European Union that could be improved. But I think we're better off in it than out of it, because there are also a lot of benefits come from being in the European Union. As it happens, I think we'd be better off as an independent country in the European Union, because we'd have a louder voice where the decisions are taken. But as Fiona said in response to the question about TTIP earlier, if the UK comes out of the European Union, then in a whole range of things like social protections, employment rights, human rights, trade, suddenly a Westminster government, and right now, and who knows for how long, that's a Tory Westminster government, would be able to act in a completely unfettered way. And given what we see them do when they're not completely unfettered, I don't want to see them have the ability to be completely unfettered. So I think for that and other reasons, we're better off in the European Union. Now, you pose the question, what happens if Scotland votes to stay in, but the UK as a whole votes to come out? Now, I hope that doesn't happen. But all the polls so far show that Scotland is likely to vote to stay in, probably by a significant majority, whereas the polls in England are much, much more narrowly balanced. And you know, we all know from the arithmetic of the UK that Scotland could vote overwhelmingly to stay in, but if the rest of the UK voted to come out, we would be outnumbered and could end up being taken out. Now, if we get into that scenario, and I should say I hope we don't, I think many people in Scotland would be really angry at that, because it would be democratically quite difficult to justify how, if we'd voted to stay in, we could end up being taken out. especially given, if you remember back to the independence referendum, what many people in the No campaign said, if you vote yes, you'll get chucked out of Europe. Now, that was never true, but having had that argument, if we then find ourselves being taken out of Europe by the very politicians that used that argument, I think a lot of people would be pretty furious at that. And inevitably, I think many people might say, well, isn't it time to look at being independent again if that's the only way in reality that we can secure our membership of the European Union? So I hope the whole UK votes to stay in the European Union, but I think people should be open-eyed about what might happen if Scotland ends up getting taken out against our will. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Michael, who's going to... Where was Lynn? I didn't see you. Yes. Questions about criminal justice and alternatives to custody, particularly I think you were talking about for women offenders.
Thank you, Lynn, for your question. I think one of the key facts that we should keep in mind at the start of this discussion is that Scotland has the second highest prison population in Western Europe, and we have the second highest female prison population in Western Europe, only exceeded by England and Wales. And a significant proportion of those that we have locked up in our prisons on a daily basis are those who are serving short prison sentences, many of which are for less than 6 months. We've decided to take a much more radical approach to the way in which we are taking forward alternatives to custody, because we've been caught up for too long in the false dichotomy of whether we are going to be soft on crime or we're going to be tough on crime. What we need to be is smart on how we deal with these issues. And what we do know is that the evidence shows us that short-term prison sentences are not an effective measure in order to reduce reoffending amongst individuals. What the evidence does shows is that alternatives to custody, community payback orders and other types of community provisions are much more effective in tackling offending behaviour and reducing offending behaviour. Over a number of years now, we've been introducing an increasing amount of what are called community payback orders, where individuals are effectively sentenced to go and do some work within their local community for the benefit of their local community. Over that period of time, we've saw a marked reduction in the number of individuals who go in these programmes who go on to commit other offences. So we want to make much better use of them and much more effective use of them in tackling the underlying causes of offending behaviour. And a key part of that is the work that we're going to be doing with female offenders. In Scotland, our female prison population has almost doubled in the last 15 years alone. And when the proposal to build a new national prison for women was put to me to be built at Inverclyde, I decided to take a different approach, not to approve that plan, but to move to an approach which will see us building a small 80-bedded national unit on the site at Compton Vale at the present moment, along with 5 community small units which will be based in different parts of the country, which will have a much clearer focus in dealing with the underlying causes that cause offending behaviour in the first place. There are particular issues around female offenders in themselves, family links, some of the causes, the abuse that they may have experienced in their own background as well, which we must get much better at tackling and supporting and addressing much more effectively. But also to recognise that for some individuals, prison will be the right place for them to go. A community alternative disposal will not be the right option for them. So that option will always be available to our sentencers in court. But the key central part to all of this is to take an approach which is much more effective in addressing the underlying causes that drive offending behaviour in the first place.
Okay, thank you. And second row here.
Hi, I'm just going to ask, obviously we were part of the C. diff, families that lost their lives in 2008, and one of the things that came out during that report was about the delayed discharge, how so many of the victims had been kept in hospital while awaiting care packages at home. And as we've heard tonight, there is an ageing population, our population is getting older, but there's also a significant move towards home care and people being cared for in their own home. And I wondered if maybe the government are thinking about being a bit more proactive in looking at the amount of money that the NHS budget costs to keep people in hospital and actually diverting that towards actually putting it into home care and seeing if we can actually look at being more proactive than reactive in future.
Can I just get your name? Michelle, thanks. And then lady in red.
Hi there, my name's Angela. My question for the government is, what is the government doing to see employers are employing more people that are on the autistic spectrum? Because I, and a many number of people I know, have been discriminated against by not getting job interviews.
Okay, thank you, Angela. And I've got somebody right in the back there, Catherine there.
My name's Janice, and my question's on organ donation. I'm really disappointed that the opt-out system didn't get voted in. Do you think Scotland will ever vote for this system?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your question, Michelle, which is a really important one, not just in the history of what happened with the C. diff outbreak, but also in the future configuration of care, and it's obviously very timely, so Shona will pick up on that. Angela, I'm going to ask Rosanna, our Fair Work Cabinet Secretary, to answer your question, which is a very important one about giving people fair access to the workforce. And Janice, organ donation is an issue and we all feel very strongly about. Obviously it's been quite topical, but I'll ask Shona to respond as Health Secretary to that one too. So do you want to, in fact, do you want to take Michelle and Janice together, and then I'll hand over to Rosanna?
I mean, first of all, I want to pay tribute to you, Michelle, and the campaign around this very, very important issue. And I think you all conducted that with great dignity, and hope that you feel that you've got a lot of progress made on not just the recommendations from the inquiry, which are obviously being implemented and work being taken forward, but I know that you have also been speaking to groups of nurses and getting across that personal patient's relatives' perspective of why it's important to listen to patients and their families. So well done for that. You talk about delayed discharge, and it's a very, very important issue. So previously, we invested £100 million over 3 years to tackle delayed discharge, because we know that part of the problem at the front door of our hospitals is quite often a bed not being available throughout the hospital, and therefore delays happen and people can't move through the hospital as quickly as possible. It's also not good for people to be kept in hospital beyond time that they need to. So particularly for frail elderly, people with dementia, we know that they lose their independence the longer that they're in hospital. So for all of those reasons, it's really important that people come out of hospital when they're ready to. So the £100 million was invested to really develop home care, develop new services in the community to prevent admission to hospital in the first place and ensure speedy discharge. However, this budget from next year onwards, we decided we needed to go further than that. So out of the £500 million that's been allocated to the NHS in 2016-17, half of it is going to social care. And we felt that was the right decision to make, because it's, as Michelle said herself, it's as much about the community services being able to keep people out of hospital and make sure people get speedy discharge from hospital that are as important as the NHS itself. And that's why £250 million a year is going to be invested going forward to really step up those services locally. And of course this area will get its share of that 250 million. I think it will make a real difference. On organ donation, can I say to Janice, there were a lot of very strongly held views around this issue, but I think everybody agrees that we need to ensure that we improve upon the level of organ donation and transplantation. There's been some progress made. So, for example, since 2008, we've seen an 82% increase in the number of deceased organ donors in Scotland and a 42% increase in the number of transplants. But we want to go further than that. So the commitment made by the Public Health Minister, Maureen Watt, was to look at consulting on a soft opt-out scheme. There were some real concerns about the aspects of the bill that was in front of people. Those on the front line of organ donation and transplantation raised concerns that the way the bill was drafted actually might lead to delays in organs being donated and transplanted because of some of the aspects of the bill. And we had to listen very carefully to the concerns of those who work on the front line. However, given the views of Parliament and the views of the public are very much sympathetic to a soft opt-out scheme. We've listened to that and we've committed to begin work very quickly indeed on a consultation to bring forward a workable scheme for soft opt-out. Now, I would want to see that happening certainly in the getting well advanced in that first year of the new parliamentary session. So I hope that's given you reassurance that that we will bring forward a better, more workable bill in this area.
I can really understand why a lot of people who support opt-out felt disappointed that the bill didn't pass last week. I've always been instinctively very supportive of an opt-out system. But I've mentioned a couple of times tonight my time as Health Secretary, and I remember talking to transplant surgeons a lot about this issue. And one of the things they said was, and remember many of them would favour this system as well, but they all said you've got to get it right, because if you introduce a system and you get it wrong or the detail's not right, then instead of improving transplant rates, you might actually do the opposite. So we've been very conscious about the need to get this right, and the bill last week, although it was brought forward with absolutely the best of intentions, we felt was fundamentally flawed, to the point where we couldn't even try and amend it to make it, to deal with those flaws. So the better thing to do is to take a step back from that and consult properly. Wales has moved to this system. That will also give us some real life evidence from the Welsh experience of how it's working in practice. And I know it will take longer, which can be very frustrating, particularly for people who are waiting for organs, can be very frustrating. But if it means we get it right, then I think in the long term we'll be doing a greater service to this whole issue than we would have done by passing rushed and flawed legislation. So I know you feel strongly about it, many of us do, but I hope we've given you some understanding of some of the reasons behind how we voted last week. Rosanna, do you want to take on the question about...
Angela, that's a really interesting question, and it is a question that's come up at other sessions such as this, because I think there's beginning to be a realisation out there that employers are simply not giving people a fair crack of the whip, really, when it comes to recruitment. It's not just people with autistic issues, it's right across the board, folk with all sorts of disabilities, but not just even those with disabilities, women, people from ethnic minorities who the way employers recruit tends to mean that they don't even really get in the door in the first place. So there are some things that we are trying very hard to do to turn that whole thing around for people. And can I say that there are beginning to be employers out there who do recognise what are the enormous abilities of folk with, for example, autistic spectrum disorders. I spoke at a big event in Edinburgh some months ago where it was mostly about IT, where some of the employers there got up and said that what they had learned over a number of years was that some of the very best computer coders, software coders they had were people with autism. And that they had begun to realise that really they needed to think about abilities rather than disabilities. And that's an important turnaround if we can make employers begin to think like that. Now, there is locally a group that has come out of a big programme of work that we've done on developing Scotland's young workforce. And one of the things that said that needed to be done was that we needed to set up employer-led local groups. Now, there is one in what is called West Region. It includes West Dunbartonshire council area. It's not just this council area, but it goes more widely. But it does exist, and I think what we need to do is to try and encourage groups and organisations, such as I dare say you are involved, to actually engage directly with that developing young workforce group to say that you would like access to some of the employers who are represented on that, to talk to them about the way they do their recruitment. Now, there are other things that we also try to do that are more specifically practical. We're working very hard with the Modern Apprenticeship Programme to try and ensure that more young people, particularly those with disabilities, do get modern apprenticeships. It's not been very good so far, and it is something that we need to make a lot better. And one of the other things that we're doing is an employer recruitment incentive, which is reopening in April, and which is going to focus on people with the biggest disadvantages, and that will include folk with, for example, autism. So there are some quite practical things that we are trying to do. But the really big change has to be a change in the perception of employers themselves and an understanding that their recruitment processes have got to be looked at more carefully to ensure that they're maximising the abilities of people of all different varieties of ability.
Okay, thank you. I've had the signal from above that time is running out, so this will be the last round, so we'll try and squeeze in 4. So, gentleman right in the middle, it's third row there. Yeah.
Me or gentleman there?
You go first and then you go.
Okay. My name's David. I was just wondering if the Scottish Government had any plans to replace the council tax with a more progressive tax, for instance, the land value tax.
Okay, and if you pass it to the gentleman right in front of you.
My name's Robert. I was at a meeting recently and I heard that 70% of the prison population have mental health problems. Do you not think that we are supposed to be a civilised society? Do you not think this should be addressed as soon as possible?
And Barbara, the lady...
Do you want to sit on Michael?
Hi, I'm Gillian. I had a truly humbling experience just before Christmas welcoming our new Syrian families to West Dunbartonshire. And I just want to know from the Scottish Government's perspective what support and resources they're going to put in the long term to ensure that we have true integration at a grassroots and community level.
Okay, thank you. And Stuart, young lady, just, yeah.
Hi, I'm Alex Robertson, representing West Dunbartonshire in the Scottish Youth Parliament. And I was just wanting to say that in 2016, the Scottish Youth Parliament's national campaign is raising the awareness of young people's mental health. And if the SNP won a majority in May, how would you work alongside the Scottish Youth Parliament with the national campaign this year?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent. David, John will take your question about council tax, and we've just had a big report on alternatives to the council tax. Robert, I'm going to ask Shona to take your question about mental health, and then, Shona, if you can also address Alex's point. And it's fantastic that our first question tonight was from a member of the Youth Parliament, and our last question tonight has been from a member of the Youth Parliament as well, so that's brilliant. And Gillian, I'll ask Fiona, I'll maybe say a word or two about Syrian refugees as well, but I'll ask Fiona to say a bit more about the work we're doing to not just to welcome them in the first instance, but make sure they become integrated and well supported into our society. John, do you want to kick off?
Yeah. In 2011, David, we were elected on a commitment to essentially host a debate about what was the right and most effective way of undertaking local taxation in Scotland. So we set up the Commission on Local Taxation, which reported just before Christmas. It was a joint establishment of a commission between ourselves and the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, and it really was designed to give an equal knowledge and awareness across a whole range of different options and possibilities so that we could have a decent debate about it at the forthcoming Scottish parliamentary elections. So that Commission report I think it did exactly what we asked it to do. It evaluated every possible option, whether it's a property-based taxation or income-based taxation or a value-based taxation is the point that you raised, and that material's out there to inform the debate. We as a party and as a government will set out some of our further thinking about how we'll respond to that before Parliament rises for the dissolution of Parliament on the 23rd of March. And that will give some pointers as to how we would take this issue forward in the next Parliament, where legislation would obviously come forward. I think so we'll set that detail out in the course of the next few weeks or so. I think the final thing I'd say is that obviously on the progressive principle, it's a principle of taxation that we accept and that we have applied when we've undertaken reform of taxation on stamp duty. We introduced a progressive land and buildings transaction tax system, which has worked very effectively. So we accept the progressive principle in taxation, and obviously we'll be looking to take forward that principle in the reforms that we undertake.
Okay, thanks, John. Shona, can you take Robert's question about mental health in relation to the prison population? Michael might want to just add a word about that as well, and then Alex's question about mental health amongst young people.
Well, I think, Robert, you make a good point, and it relates back to the previous answer that Michael gave about who ends up in prison, and sometimes better alternatives and indeed earlier intervention can sometimes change the outcome for individuals. A couple of things to say. First of all, fairly recently, the NHS has taken over the provision of health services within the prison population, and I think that affords an opportunity to do more working with prisoners, particularly those who have mental health issues, to try to get to the underlying causes and help to address some of those, particularly before they leave prison. But we also have an opportunity over the next few years, because we're investing some additional monies, another 150 million of new money over the next 5 years, and I would like to see that money really try to address some of the inequalities that we have, whether that's people with mental health issues within their prisons, people who are suffering a range of issues, not just mental health issues, but addiction issues and poverty, and really trying to get better support to people at an earlier stage. And getting better support to people at an earlier stage also involves us improving the children and adolescent mental health services. A priority for that spend has been to improve services for children and young people, because we know, again, if we can get that support to young people and children early enough, we can offset perhaps more serious mental health issues further down the line. The CAM service, the Children and Adolescent Mental Health Service, is quite, it's a level of service for children and young people with quite significant mental health issues, but there's a whole range of children and young people underneath that need support, but they might not need the CAM service. So we've been discussing how we might work with schools, for example, to get something a bit lower down, but earlier and quicker. So I would be really happy to work with the Youth Parliament to see how we might work together to work out what that might be and what would be the best set of interventions, and listen to the voices of young people themselves, because sometimes young people don't come along and talk about their health issues as much as perhaps the older generation do. So we could work with you. So I'll get Jamie Hepburn, the Minister responsible for mental health, to make contact with the Youth Parliament and look at how we might take that forward. But it's a great idea.
Okay, thanks, Shona. And Gillian, your question about Syrian refugees is a really important one. Towards the end of last year, I set up a Scottish Government task force, which is chaired by Fiona's Deputy Minister Hamza Yousaf, which is working with local authorities and others to really make the arrangements for Scotland to play our part in dealing with the refugee crisis. My view is quite simple here. I think we've got a moral obligation to help deal with the refugee crisis, but I also think we've got a practical obligation. You know, it's not going to go away if countries bury their heads in the sand. It's just going to become even more chaotic to deal with, whereas if all countries come together and we all play our part, then perhaps we might just manage to find a way of dealing with it effectively. We've already had a number of Syrians come to Scotland. The first arrived not long before Christmas, and you're absolutely right to talk about the importance not just of welcoming and making initial arrangements, but making sure the right support is there. I myself met with a Syrian family just the week before last, and the experience of talking to that family underlines how vulnerable the people who are coming here are. You know, this family, mum and dad, 3 beautiful wee girls, but their son had been killed in a sectarian attack in Syria. They'd fled to Jordan, had been in a camp, and now are living here. But the trauma that these children are suffering is beyond our imagination. So if we're going to help them to settle, then we've got to make sure the support is in place for the long term for people who need our help, and that's what the task force is doing. So I'll let Fiona maybe say a word or two about the detail of the work the task force is doing to make sure that we are providing that support.
So in terms of the task force, it is established with support from all government ministers that have got areas of responsibility, whether it's looking at children's issues, whether it's looking at housing issues, whether it's looking at health issues. Clearly, in terms of what the UK government is doing in terms of the Syrians they're bringing to Scotland and to the rest of the UK, they're coming from outside Europe, and many of them are the most vulnerable. So therefore, a lot of the issues will be about support around health issues, Certainly language issues initially very, very important to help people be involved and part of communities. So the practical support's there. The funding is also, the UK government has announced funding of £460 million by 2019 for the first year. But what we've said, that this is a long-term issue. The support will be needed on the ground for a long time, so they've also agreed to have a second-year funding. And all that will have to go into a lot of support on the ground. But it's also about how people behave and the welcome they have. And I want to share what I heard today from a young man from Clydebank. And we were talking about arts. I was visiting the Fresh Creations, and he was saying, yes, you know, there's the practical support, but it's also how we make sure that the Syrian families coming here to Clydebank are made to feel welcome. And he was talking about using arts and using the connections and communications and a welcome and exchanging arts to help them do that. And that was a young man from your community wanting to say how he wants to see Clydebank welcoming refugees. And I spent Burns Night as part of Celtic Connections at a celebration of arts and music. And these people have come through terrible, terrible situations. But if there's one thing that binds us, one is our humanity. A signal of a country and a nation is how it treats the most vulnerable, yes, in our society, but internationally. There's also a thing that connects us as well, and we can connect through a welcome, and a welcome through some of the arts and communities you can exhibit. And telling the story of Clydebank and exchanging stories is one of the ways to make people feel welcome. And I'm absolutely convinced, as has happened elsewhere, that this community will rise to the mark, and with the support of the Council, the health services and everybody in this community show that Scotland does show compassion and will, as that young man from Clydebank has said, welcome these refugees to Clydebank.
Okay, before I hand back to Joe, can I just thank you all very much for a fantastic series of questions. I hope you feel we've attempted to answer all your questions as we promised we would do. Any of you who want to follow up on your questions, or anybody who feel we didn't answer them properly, or if you've got other questions you want to, we'll be around for a while. But thank you very much for coming here tonight. It certainly helps us to hear the things that are important to you. So thank you very much for being here.
Okay, if I could ask you to give Cabinet members a couple of minutes just to clear the stage, and we'll look forward to meeting you through in the reception hall for a cup of tea, maybe a wee biscuit and a chat afterwards. So but for now, again, can I say thank you all very much.